This is Paul Lonsack, former Navyman who served aboard the USS Guadalcanal under Admiral Daniel V. Gallery. And we're going to be talking with him today about some of these artifacts we have, some of them concerning the U-505 even, which Paul served aboard the USS Guadalcanal, which its designation was CVE 60. It was a Casablanca class carrier, what they call the Jeep carrier. It was a shorter carrier, and it was manufactured by who was that? Kaiser and somebody that manufactured the Kaiser
Shipyard.
Kaiser Shipyard. And Paul, how long did you serve in the Navy?
3 years.
And what were the 3 years?
Water tender, first class I came out as. The ship was commissioned in Bremerton, Washington. Came down the west coast through the canal, and we sailed the Atlantic from the equator to the North Atlantic was our area where we patrolled, and I submarine duty.
And what years were you aboard her?
I was on there, not commissioning, I was on there decommissioning. 43, it was commissioned. And I think it was April. 43, and I was on there till 46 when it was decommissioned.
And during your years aboard that ship, how many times was the ship in action, as far as sinking submarines and such as that?
I don't remember exactly how many submarines we sunk. I think there's somewhere around 9 that we got credit for. I think it was around 9, and captured 1.
And that was, of course, the U-505, which
the coast of Africa.
Yeah, which now resorts at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, Illinois. It's on display there.
Right.
Tell me about that thing you're holding there. That's a little wallet satchel pack.
Well, we made Liberty in Casablanca, and this is just a folder or wallet of some sort that I bought when I went on the beach in Casablanca.
As you can see,
we went to Casablanca for supplies and fuel oil. Other times they used to send a tanker out. If we didn't go into Casablanca, a tanker would come out and meet us, and we would sail alongside each other, and they'd run the hoses across, and we'd get supplies of fuel and supplies from a tanker.
This says Casablanca, Maroc on it, which is Morocco. And when you captured the U-505, obviously they allowed you to go aboard and pick up some things off of her.
There was before we captured her, Gallery formed a boarding party. We used to see him train on the hangar deck. I never knew what for, but saw him up there training, and he had his mind set that he was going to capture a submarine and take it back to the States with us. And they used to train for that, and the boarding party went aboard it. After the Germans left that submarine, the boarding party went aboard and shut off all the floodgates. They were flooding the submarine to sink it.
Yeah, scuttling it.
And it would be scuttled, but the boarding party went aboard, closed all the valves, shut off all the gates, and took pumps over there and pumped the water out And then we put a line on it and started towing it back to Bermuda.
Tell me about this particular piece here. This looks like a small battery.
Well, it's like a little coil, a condenser of some sort that they had aboard. He is a German.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one you took off the U-505.
300 volts, 500 volts.
Yeah, this is an actual piece of history right here that came off of the U-505 submarine. It says MPT either 3 or 500V, and it's got it looks like a Westinghouse symbol on it, quite frankly, but
some kind of a coil.
Yeah. And next we'll do the cigarette pack.
That came from the...
Let me show it on the camera here. It says Gold Dollar Cigarettes and Cigarettin 24 up the side. I don't know if you can see that or not with the glare. And on the back it's completely in German language. May have to switch.
Read German?
No, I don't read German. But it is in German language.
The boarding party brought all kinds of artifacts back from the submarine for souvenirs. And some of the guys started taking them and hiding them in their locker. And the captain made them bring everything out and put on the hangar deck, and he distributed all these different artifacts for souvenirs to the crew. And that's how that's my share of the artifact that came off that submarine.
Okay, and how about this money here? Where did you pick up this?
That came all...
This is French money, obviously. Or actually it's Moroccan, but it's
from Casablanca.
Yeah.
I saved that for souvenirs. That's it. I wanted to show it.
That's an old piece of money there.
French Morocco.
And this one too. And there's an assortment here of buttons that obviously came off some of your uniforms.
Oh, there was spare buttons. When we went in the Navy, they gave us spare buttons. In case to lose any buttons off your uniform,
yeah,
we had buttons to sew on. They gave us an assortment of different sizes.
Yeah, they've got anchors on them, most of them. In fact, most of them say Navy and have the anchors. Some of them are kind of a light blue color.
Spare buttons they gave us when you went to boot camp.
There's a gold one with the presidential seal of the United States of America. I don't know if that'll show up well. Let me switch to close-up mode here and see if it's any better.
That's in case you lose a button, you can sew it back on there. You didn't have to go looking for buttons.
And tell me what that is.
Oh, that's when I was second-class water tender. That's the insignia you put on your arm. That was second class.
Let me hold that up.
Got $98 a month for second class, plus 50% for hazardous duty, sea duty.
And this is Paul's old seaman cap, Navy cap. It's even got his name right there in it. I don't know if you can see it or not. It says Lonsac P, and it looks like I, but that may just be a mark. But you can definitely tell that that's his old cap.
Yeah, everything that we had to be stenciled, so when it went in a laundry bag and it came back and it got distributed to us, the compartment cleaner will put the clean clothes on your bunk, and if you didn't have a name on it, you never got it back.
Okay.
That was in good shape, yeah.
This piece here is a metal,
Black.
yeah, it says U-68 sunk 10 April 1944 by the USS Guadalcanal. And I will switch to close-up mode in case that didn't show up, so that you can see what it says. Tell me about that particular piece.
The shipyard evidently made these plaques, and each one of us aboard ship got one as a souvenir when we sunk the U-68 in April. We, as a souvenir, the shipyard manufactured, made them. Somebody said that one time they were made out of the ship's ballast tank, but it's not true. That was just black iron that was made in the shipyard for a souvenir for one of the subs.
And where did all these coins come from here? These are all British and French, and one or two are Canadian. And one or two of them have the Star of David on them, oddly enough.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It does. Some of them came from Casablanca.
This one's got a 5-pointed star, but
came from Bermuda. We stopped in Bermuda a couple of times for supplies and fuel.
This one has got the Star of David on it. I may have to switch to close-up mode again. Now, Admiral Gallery, was he captain at that time, or was he admiral?
He was full captain. He became admiral when he was transferred from the ship to shore duty. Then he made admiral.
Okay, and of course we know he wrote several books. Captain Fatso, and well, Mama's got quite a collection of his books. But what kind of a captain was he? Was he a real...
He was short, thin guy, and he would walk around on a flight deck for exercise with the commander. The commander was Johnson. And they would walk around on the flight deck for exercise around him. And when they were up there, nobody else walked around up there. You stayed away from them.
How many ships were in your particular group?
We had 5 destroyers escorting us. 2 on starboard side, 2 on the port side, and 1 in the front when we were just cruising, and taking off, and 1 in the back of the ship, aft part, when the ships were landing. So in case of when the planes were landing, in case the plane went over the side,
yeah,
they would pick them up.
Do you remember the name of any of the ships that escorted you?
Oh yeah, Polk.
USS Polk?
Yeah. P-O-L-K, Polk.
Yeah.
Same as your
county.
There, Polk
Yeah.
County. Chatelaine was another one. I don't remember.
Did you know any of the guys from the other ships?
Did I know any of them?
Yeah.
No.
No, just the guys from the Guadalcanal?
Yeah. We didn't associate with each other when we went ashore. We just associated with our own division usually. Didn't associate with anybody on the ship even. They were deckhands and they called us the Black Gang.
The Black Gang?
Years ago, they used to shovel coal.
Yeah.
They used to be black when they come up in the fire room.
And you were talking earlier about these destroyers being old, what'd you call them, four stackers?
Yeah, the first time we went out, we had 4 escorts instead of 5. And they were old 4 stackers. They were World War I destroyers. The reason they call them 4 stackers because they had 4 boilers and they had 4 stacks coming off the boilers. And they were our first escort. They didn't have enough new destroy escorts to supply us with, so we had the old 4 stackers. And they could barely keep up with us, and our speed was around 22 knots full speed, and they couldn't keep up with that.
Probably not. Do you remember where you were on December 7th, 1941 when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, I was home having lunch with my mother and father. I was getting ready to go to work. I was a pin boy in a bowling alley, getting ready to go down there and set up pins. On weekends I did that, and during the week I worked in the machine shop after school.
And what was your initial reaction to the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Well, we heard it on the radio. We were surprised. Didn't know where Pearl Harbor was or what it was at that time. We found out real soon. And everyone was surprised and gung-ho, ready to go fighting, ready to go into service.
A lot different from today's world, isn't it?
Yeah, today they would run away probably. We were ready to go. And I finally signed up, and I was sworn in 42, and I believe it was November or December is when I got sworn in New York City into the Navy. And they had so many people volunteering that they never took me into boot camp till March of 43.
Wow. And that was Pearl Harbor was kind of reminiscent as to what happened on 9/11/2001. You know, that big of a shock.
Yeah, it was. Well, evidently, I believe, and I think history shows that Roosevelt had some knowledge and information that he didn't share with the people.
Yeah, I have kind of felt the same way at times through what I've seen. But America was thrust into the war, and they made the best of it and tore them all up.
And then after they invaded Pearl Harbor and bombed it, then they went and invaded Alaska.
Yeah, the Aleutian Islands.
Yeah, they went up there at the Kiska and Attu up there in Alaska, and they went ashore, and the Navy Seabees and the Navy acted as army, and they fought the Japanese that landed in Kiska and Attu.
Do you have any really memorable experiences from serving in the Navy that you're very fond of, or that were very bad times, maybe a bad storm, or because I know you went across the North Atlantic, and I know you've told me a number of times that the waves were 50 feet tall. And
we ran into a storm. We got a new captain, and he got a report that there were 2 German submarines north of England, and he wanted to get them under his belt. He wanted credit for that, and he started heading for the submarines there north of England. But he was told there was a bad storm coming. He wanted the subs. He didn't pay any attention, and we hit a storm. The waves were 70 foot high. It peeled our flight deck like an orange peeled. The bow of the flight deck peeled it back. It bent our forward elevator. We couldn't use the elevator to put planes up or land. The ship was also broken in two places. It cracked.
Yeah, because those ships were only welded together at that time.
Yeah.
Those Kaiser Jeep carriers.
He would produce one every 30 days. They would lay the keel and have it in the water in 30 days.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they got down. I watched a program on them to where they turned one out in 7 days because they challenged them to turn one out in 7 days, and I believe they turned one out in less than that.
The carriers took 30 days.
Yeah, there were a whole bunch of those Casablanca class carriers.
Quite a few.
And I don't think even one of them exists today. There's not one of them left.
They're all scrapped. The majority of them were towed over to Japan, and they cut them up and melted them for scrap iron.
That's kind of sad that they did that to the Guadalcanal and, of course, to the USS Enterprise, CV6, because that was the most decorated ship of World War II, and I think it should have been preserved. And Captain Bull Halsey tried to preserve the USS Enterprise, but they scrapped her anyway. And now they're scrapping the new USS Enterprise, which was made in 1961.
The day we got that U-505, the destroyers picked up a contact on sonar, and they dropped some depth charges on it, but it would go down the bottom of the ocean and lay down there quiet and wouldn't move, and just sat there for a long time. And we patrolled over and above them to wait for it to surface. We played around with that for about 5 days. It would come up. It had to come up for air. It would come up for air at nighttime, and then go right back down again. And then the destroyers picked up the noise, the propeller noises on sonar. They would drop depth charges. We did that for about 4 or 5 days, till finally one of the depth charges jammed the rudder on the German submarine U-505, and it couldn't move. Could not maneuver, just go round and round in circles. So while it was going around and around in circles, Gallery had the destroyers drop more depth charges on it, just close by, but not to sink it. So finally the German captain on the sub decided it's time to surface and give up, because the sub was getting their plates warped and busted. They were taking out water. So he surfaced, and they went overboard. The crew, and German crew went overboard. And then a boarding party from our ship and the destroyers went aboard the sub and disconnected all the demolition charges they had on there to blow the ship up in case they opened the hatch or something. They cut all the wires, and then they pumped the water out, took pumps over and pumped the water out.
Yeah, because they were trying to get their hands on that Enigma machine, weren't they not?
Yes. They took all the coding machines, all the material on there, all the fields and everything else that they could gather up. They would bring aboard our ship, and the planes would fly it into Casablanca. And from there they went to Washington.
And did y'all take any of the German prisoners aboard the Guadalcanal?
all the prisoners came on our ship from all the subs that we sank. The destroyers would pick them up, and they'd bring them over, and we had a prison made on our ship. Right under the flight deck, there was a catwalk where the stacks would go from port to starboard depending on which way the wind is blowing, so the people on the flight deck won't get overcome with the fumes from the stack. So they closed out both ends of that catwalk, and that was the prison for them. But once a day in the morning, when there was no flight quarters, weather permitting, the prisoners would go up on the flight deck and they would wash them down with saltwater fire hoses. And they were glad to get it.
And what else do you remember about the Guadalcanal herself? I mean, was she
It was a ship that was built in 30 days. It had no business being up there in the North Atlantic in those storms, because it wasn't built for that. Plates would buckle, we'd get leaks at the pump all the time. We made our own water. When we first used to go out, we had 2 evaporators making fresh water. And we would make about 1,000 gallons an hour on each evaporator. After being out to sea for anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, the evaporators would get all caked up with salt from being cooking that seawater, and we'd be lucky to make 2 or 3 gallons, 200 or 300 gallons an hour. So we had fresh water hours. Certain hours you could get fresh water to drink. In emergency, you had to go to sick bay for water, fresh water, and we'd have to have salt water showers. Didn't have enough water for showers. We had to save the water for the boilers.
Now, as a person who lived through World War II and saw all of that and went out and served your country, how do you feel about the current government that we have now and about the state of the United States of America?
At times I feel like it was a waste of time. The prime years of my life were wasted for what's going on now in the government and the way the government is run. I feel like it's a waste of time, but I never hated a day of being in the Navy. But I don't like what's going on now.
Not too many people do. And the numbers that you see on Fox News as well as other places are showing it, but they don't seem to care.
Well, it's a different time.
That is for sure. Today's date, by the way, is, let's see,
16th.
Yeah, June 16th, Sunday, 2013. And that's the day we're recording this interview with Mr. Paul Lonsack. Do you remember your naval serial number?
I sure do. You never forget that. 808-86-55. You remember that like your birthday. I had some good times while I was in the service, and had some scary times. There were times you wasn't sure you're going to make it back.
And can you remember one of those times in detail for us?
Well, when we were down at fire room, general quarters, and they were dropping depth charges, and the steam lines on the boiler would be shaken. They were on springs so that they wouldn't break, and they were jumping up and down, and that was kind of scary. Our steam pressure used to be 275 pounds. Saturated steam, superheated steam was 550 pounds. If one of those lines ever broke, it cut you right in half.
Wow. Kind of like a hydro laser now.
We had 4 boilers on the ship, 2 forward and 2 aft. There was 650,000 pounders.
And how fast could the ship go in knots?
Top speed was about 22 knots.
So what is that, about 20 miles an hour?
No, it's probably be about 24 miles an hour.
About 24 miles an hour? And I can't imagine being out there in the Atlantic in 70-foot waves with a ship like that. How long was Guadalcanal, do you know?
510, I think, foot long.
510 foot long, and not very wide either, was it?
I don't remember what that was.
I'm sure the information can be looked up online. I have read up on the Casablanca.
10,000 pound category. It wasn't a very big ship. The crew members we had, without the flight crew aboard, we had around 600 crew, and with the flight, when the flight crew came aboard, we would double that. And we'd have around 1,200 members on the ship.
1,200 crew?
1,200 total crew when the flight crew was on. We carried 22 airplanes.
And what kind of airplanes were they, do you remember?
Hellcats, TBM, TBF.
Hellcat, TBM, TBF. And y'all, wasn't there also another plane aboard that was like a reconnaissance plane?
No, we didn't have that.
I think I may have seen that on some other ships where they...
We didn't have that. No. We didn't have any of those. When the plane went over the side or missed the flight deck and didn't catch one of the hooks, the destroyer would pick them up. If the destroyer was following us, aft. We always had one either aft or forward, depending on what we were doing.
And did you have stores aboard the ship? In other words, where you could go and buy cigarettes or whatever? You could
buy cigarettes and candy, shaving lotion.
How much was a pack of cigarettes then?
6 cents a pack.
6 cents a pack?
60 cents or 60 cents a carton.
Wow. Now they're $60 a carton in some places.
Oh, they?
Yeah.
When we used to come to port, the guys used to buy, that's out at sea. When you were in port, they cost regular price cigarettes.
Yeah.
But out at sea, there's no taxes or anything on them. So before we used to come in, the guys used to buy cartons of cigarettes to take home for their parents and when they're going on leave. 60 cents a carton.
Wow. So they bring them home.
We had a small store on a ship. Once in a while he would make soda, and we could get some soda to drink. Once in a great while he would make some ice cream, but the ice cream was like slush.
Yeah.
It was, this guy ran the store, you see, and we could buy essentials there.
Did you ever personally speak to Captain Gallery?
No, I talked to Commander Johnson. I was on watch one time down the fire room, and a messenger came down. They said, we're looking for Lonsack. And I said, hey, that's me. He says, Commander Johnson wants to see you. You go, uh-oh. I don't remember doing anything. I didn't know what do you want me for? So I had to borrow a hat from somebody because it had to go up to his quarters, and you have to have a hat on. I went into his quarters, saluted him. He was a big guy, twice my size. He says, "I want a favor from you." And I couldn't imagine what the commander of the ship is asking me for a favor. I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "I have a seaman that I want punished, and I'm going to turn him over to you, and he's got 50 hours of extra duty. I want you to see that he performs them, and make sure that he gets extra duty. Give him the hardest job you can give him." I saluted him, said, "Yes, sir," and went back down, and poor guy, he was down there cleaning, painting and cleaning for us, 50 hours.
What had he done?
He was AWOL.
Oh, he was AWOL?
Yeah, that was funny. I couldn't imagine what the hell he wanted me for. "I want a favor," he says. "Oh, Jesus."
Yeah, I imagine you were pretty quick to give him the favor, huh?
I don't believe it. I didn't know what I did wrong. What he wanted me for.
Apparently it wasn't you that did anything wrong, but him that did it wrong.
Many planes, when they came in to land, if their tail hook on the plane didn't catch their resting gear, it would hit a series of cables that across the bow of the flight deck, and we would tear the plane up. The pilot very seldom got hurt. He would tear the plane up. He'd get out of the plane. They'd push the plane over the side. They didn't repair any airplanes. They just pushed them over the side that they wrecked. We started out with about 22 airplanes at each cruise. On the way back, if we had 6 that were flyable, well, that's a lot.
So, no wonder there were so many planes made during the World War II, and the machine that, or the industrial machine that the United States became.
There was a friend of mine, I still in touch with him, John Layback. His battle station was on the flight deck, because he was called Oil King. His job was to keep the ship on even keel. When you pump the oil out of tanks, he would pump water in there and keep the ship on even keel so that the planes could land easier. He says that he saw 2 torpedoes that missed us. They went across our bow. He was on a hangar deck, and that was his battle station. That's how he saw them.
You got lucky then, huh?
Yeah, we were lucky.
Hang on a second, because this battery is going dead. Let me shut this down and we'll get another battery. Okay, we got a fresh battery here.
For entertainment, we didn't have any radio, didn't have any cell phones, didn't have any movies. We would have movies periodically when they were in flight quarters. On a hangar deck, they would put a screen up, and they would run some of these old musical movies. And also, we had an orchestra or a band on the ship. The chaplain was the band leader, and he played a saxophone, and the guys would get out there on the hangar deck and dance with each other. And you'd go down, you'd go around in a compartment, and we'd look for magazines that somebody brought aboard when we were ashore, and we would pick up magazines and try to read magazines, and most of the time we just slept. We used to stand 4 on and 8 off to watch, and when somebody was sick, we would stand 4 on or 4 off.
And when you say watch, what does that mean? Your duty hours?
Working hours.
And you work down in the
Fire room.
fire room.
One night we were, and 9:30 the lights went out. 5:30 in the morning the lights went on in the compartment. We were playing cards one night, using the flashlight, about 6 of us, and there was this one good-looking kitty. It was his 18th birthday, and we were playing blackjack. So I had 12 o'clock watch, and he had 12 o'clock duty. He was on the flight deck. He was a plane pusher. Pushed the planes around there when they landed. We decided, about 10:30, we decided to quit playing cards and get ready to go on watch. I went down the fire room. He went up on the flight deck. The first thing in the morning, during the night, I was 12 before watch. I heard that he got hurt. One of the planes landed. When the tail hook caught the arresting gear, the cable, there was a wire cable about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. The cable busted, and when it broke, it whipped around, took one of his legs clean off, the other one half off, and in the morning they were going around asking for volunteers for blood for him, but he didn't make the morning. Good-looking kid from New York State, 18th birthday.
Wow.
I was a little sad.
Yeah, that must have been quite a shock.
We had a couple of, I don't know how many burials aboard ship. The chaplain would perform, all religions.
In other words, it didn't matter what religion you were, he would...
Different Jewish, Protestant, or Catholic.
Yeah.
Baptist, he did them all. He, when somebody had to be buried, either from our ship or one of the other ships, they would come down to the fire room for a case of bricks, fire bricks. And they would make a canvas bag in a sail locker, and they put the bag of bricks in there and put the person's body in there, sew the bag up, and they put it on a piece of plywood, and the chaplain would say a prayer, and they would slip them into the ocean. And when they did that, we had to stop the engine because the propellers would chop them up otherwise. And that was our burial ceremony.
Did you ever get reprimanded yourself for doing anything you shouldn't have?
No, I try not to. I try to stay clean. Yeah, one time, the chief gave me, we were going to go out to sea, and one of the valves that I put together somehow didn't fit. And I tightened the bolts up, and when we started up the boilers, the valve started leaking real bad. Had to shut the boilers down. It was right on top of the boiler. Go on top of the boiler, take that valve completely apart, and repair it and put it back together. After I got done, I went up to the hangar deck to get some fresh air, and Chief came along. He told me to go back down to the fire room. I told him I can't make it because as I walked, I was leaving footprints from the sweat, all the sweating I did. I told him I can't make it, I got to go down and get some air. He says, I want you to go right now. I said, I'm not going. He says, you got 8 hours extra duty. I said, I don't care if you give me 100. I'm not going down, I can't do it. I said, I'm wiped out from all the sweating. He says, okay, you got 200 hours. So I still can't do it. Then he told me I was restricted. And then the division officer came and wanted to know what happened. I told him. He says, okay, he says, I'll post the hours that you're supposed to get in the fire room, and you cross off the hours as you do them, he said. But he knew I was going to do it. I'll do them all. So the chief and I, after that, were no longer friends. When he wanted me to do something, he would write notes and give it to a fireman to give me to do. Verbally, we didn't talk.
And what was his name?
Shriver. He must have weighed about 300 pounds. It's the only time I had problems. Oh no, one other time. I was in charge of the fire room, and I made out the watch list. And we were in port, Norfolk. And
Virginia?
I put this one fireman on watch. And he didn't like that because his wife was in town. If your wife or somebody was in town, you could go Liberty every day, or go ashore every day. So this guy came around a corner, he saw me in his gangway, and he says, "You put me on watch. You know my wife is in town and I want to go ashore." I told him, "Well, I can't help that because half of the crew was on Liberty and on leave, and I was short-handed. You have to stand a watch." So he started arguing with me, and he gave me a shove and shoved me against the bulkhead. But at that time we start fighting, and who come around a corner but the division officer? I want to know what happened. So I told him I put him on watch, and he's unhappy because his wife is in town. He says, "Okay." He says, "Okay, put him on we're going to punish him." He said, he struck you and he pushed you, and I saw him do that, so therefore we're going to court-martial him. So he said, "Go in that engineering room and put him on watch." So he was court-martialed. He got busted down one rank, and he couldn't go ashore for 30 days. So he was no longer friends of mine. Yeah, he got punished, court-martialed.
Yeah, they didn't play around in those days.
No messing around, you couldn't do that. Well, I put him on watch, and he had duty. I had to put him on duty because we're short-handed.
Where were you on the day that the Germans surrendered?
We were out to sea. Evidently they knew the surrender was coming, and we were in Mayport, Florida. At that time we were training pilots because the war was just about over. We were training pilots out of Mayport, and after the crew was out on Liberty, they went ashore with loudspeakers, bullhorns, and jeeps to try to gather the crew up to come back in. They knew what was going on. They didn't know they didn't come back, so we had to go out with half a crew out to sea because they didn't want us to be in port to celebrate, evidently.
And where were you when the war finally did end and Japan surrendered?
We were training pilots out of Jacksonville and Mayport. 1 week, one place, and then transfer to the East Coast to the West Coast and train pilots. Gulf Coast, rather.
And then I guess one day you walked off the Guadalcanal and never walked back on her again.
Yeah, well, I was supposed to get discharged, but had to stay an extra 6 months because of a shortage of engineering people. So I put in an extra 6 months. I got out in 46 in March. Finally. Got on a bus in Norfolk and and took us to the train station, wound up in Lido Beach, Long Island, and got discharged. They gave me a train ticket home, and I think it was $300. They said goodbye.
And then you went home, back to New Jersey?
Went home and looked for a job. For 2 weeks, we had mustering out pay, $20 a week for 52 weeks. I collected 2 weeks, and I wasn't going to stand in line for $20. I went and got a job and went to work.
And where'd you go to work for?
I went to work in a machine shop. Wound up in General Motors, Telco batteries. Put in 31 years there.
And you retired from GM.
And that's about it.
Yeah. And you had some trouble with the unions at GM, didn't you?
Yeah, constantly. When you have unions in the factory, you constantly have trouble. Somebody is writing grievances about something. Somebody's claiming something wrong. And you have to answer them and come to some kind of a solution.
And a lot of people are aware that the unions now are strong-arming, and apparently they were just as strong-arming back then, because I've heard stories of them flattening tires, just busting the windows out of cars. And
They threatened me. They threatened me a couple of times. I fired the union president twice, and each time I did that, the hoodlums would come down from Detroit, big shot union people, and they threatened me, going to blow up my tank, the gas tank in the car, and everything else. I used to carry a baseball bat in the car with me when I used to go to work in the morning.
apparently nothing has changed with the unions.
Never will.
No, they still use these strong-arming tactics. Some of them, that is to say. Particular ones. But anyway, is there anything else you'd like to add to this? Anything you'd like to say to anyone who might ever see this someday? Next generation or whatever?
I don't regret being in the Navy, but I regret the times now that I feel like my time was wasted. The prime years of my life was wasted where the government is being handled now.
Yeah. Well, I'm about half your age, and I feel the same way, except, I never went in the Army or anything like that, but or the Navy, but seeing what's happening to the country and how the media panders to the government and basically run cover for them, just kind of gets my ire up. But anyway, this has been an interview with, what was your rank again?
Water tender first class when I got out.
Water tender first class, Paul Lonsack from New Brunswick, New Jersey. Is that your hometown?
That's correct.
And thank you for spending this time with us and verifying all these old artifacts here, that they do come from the U-505 and from that time period. Didn't you say that this particular piece hung on the Guadalcanal itself?
I had this hanging in the garage. Now this was made in the shipyard in Norfolk. Each one of us got this plaque commemorating sinking the U-68. One thing about those prisoners, they were always pretty nice. Never had any problem with them. Nobody tried to cause any trouble. They were tickled to death. They were off the submarine and on the ship.
And I'll bet they were. It's like a steel coffin.
I wonder where this got this and where this got.
Yeah, you gave that to us a number of years ago.
Yeah.
It's quite a heavy piece, actually.
Black piece of black iron, what it is today.
Yeah.
They cut them off and they made them there.
Well, at any rate, thank you for talking with us, Paul, and wish you nothing but luck with the rest of your time here in this flesh age. And we appreciate your insights and the things that you shared with us. A lot of these coins are British and French.
The submarine was finally towed into Bermuda, and it was hid in a cove, one of the small coves there in Bermuda, and covered with branches of trees, so that the Germans would not be able to detect it. In case the submarine or something went by that area and never surfaced and see the sub there. They didn't want the Germans to know we had the submarine and we had all the codes and code machines, and by having those code machines, when they made the invasion in the Normandy, they were copying all the German messages, and the Germans didn't know that we had the machine, and they were copying our code.
Well, God has His way of working things, and He certainly worked a magnificent work in the defeat of the Germans.
He saved a lot of lives.
Yeah, and even the defeat of the Japanese. But it was had to be an incredible time to be alive and to have seen.
After the Germans surrendered, we went into dry dock. Forgot about that. And they repainted our ship different camouflage for the Pacific Ocean. Different colors than we had on Atlantic. So we got the ship all repainted and ready to go. And then they dropped that atomic bomb. Truman had them drop that atomic bomb, which saved us from going over to the Pacific Ocean to fight the Japanese.
So the Guadalcanal was mainly an Atlantic ship.
Yeah, except for being built in Vancouver, Washington. We brought it around.
Oh, she was built out on the Pacific?
Yeah, Vancouver, Washington.
Oh, okay. When you said Washington, I guess I thought you meant Washington, D.C.
No, Kaiser Shipyard was out there on the West Coast.
No, I didn't know where they were. I think they had several Kaiser shipyards, didn't they?
Number of them, yes. They were building tanks and everything else.
Yeah. Though the USS Guadalcanal was eventually melted down and sold for scrap or whatever, her legacy did live on with her namesake. There was another ship named USS Guadalcanal, which was a helicopter aircraft carrier, USS Guadalcanal LPH-7. Again, we would like to thank Mr. Paul Lonsack for taking the time to make this documentary and to sit down and talk with us and tell us of the events of those times. And thank you for watching this presentation. This has been Just Thoughts.